All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Miguel Delgado. Miguel, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I'll tell you, I've been looking forward to this. And I want to start off by giving a shout out to Vince Cavino because Vince is the one that connected you and I. And I'll tell you what, man, I love Vince. I had him on the show a while back, and man, that was a powerful interview with Vince, and him and I just getting to know each other, and I've been able to make some pretty doggone valuable introductions for him. For they got this event coming up. It's getting closer now. In fact, isn't it? I think it's this month, maybe. They're doing. I think it's down in Austin and stuff.
Yeah, next month in
It's
October
next.
23rd to 25th. Yeah.
Okay. So it's next month, and I was able to connect him with a couple of folks regarding that event and stuff. And he came back later, and he's like, "Wow, Kev, that was exactly who I needed to talk to for this." And man, that makes you feel good. But I'll tell you, I just love who Vince is and how he shows up. And so when he was telling me about you and that, Kevin, you should really talk with Miguel and get to know him a little bit and have him on your show. I was all in. And so you and I already got to have a conversation, get to know each other a little bit. And now here we are. And I've been looking forward to this, Miguel. And the beautiful thing about connecting through somebody like Vince that we already both know is I don't know what it felt like for you during our first conversation, Miguel, but for me, it kind of felt like you and I had already known each other for years just because we both we met through Vince and just both have just such high what's the right word I'm looking at? I just love Vince, and so anybody that he says I should talk with, I'm just like I'm in. And
Yeah.
so
When the
and
relationships are strong and the rapport is there, it's easy to trust.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, what I'd like to do is I want to start off by I want to turn it over to you so that we can set some context for our listeners. And I want you to be able to talk about what you do and who you serve. And of course, what inspires you most about the work you get to do and the impact you're making. And give us some of the backstory too, because one thing I do know is you've got an amazing backstory and like that's how we really connect with people by just sharing our stories and stuff. So I'll just kind of turn it over to you and give you a little leeway there.
Sure. Well, I'll start with your first question in terms of what I do. So I help people on a surface level. I help people with their money, right?
Okay.
I help people with their money in terms of helping them determine what are some of the goals that they might have for their lives. It could be, whether it's as simple as starting a business, selling a business, retirement, those kinds of things. So at a surface level, that's what I do. What I really do is really create this bridge between what I call the financial world and the human world.
Okay.
And it's about bringing alignment and making sure that we're not just creating wealth for the sake of creating wealth. We're doing it for something meaningful, something that's purpose driven. And so the kind of clients that I work with a lot are happen to be business owners, entrepreneurs that are heart centered, they're purpose driven, they're trying to build something that's larger than themselves. And it doesn't always necessarily mean that they're out here trying to change the entire world. It could mean, something for their families or something for their community or the state that they live in or for, I don't know, a certain demographic that they want to serve and help. But it always ties back to why am I building this? I've been doing this so I started in the industry, financial services back in 2006. So I've been doing this for almost 20 years.
Okay.
And then started my book of business, my practice back in 2012. It's kind of a backstory there, which I'll get into in a moment. But when I did that, throughout all those years, I had the privilege of working with all different kinds of people, from business owners, different kinds of businesses, right? From medical to attorneys and construction and what have you. Um, and over time, as people as I saw people com achieve some of their goals, kids going off to college, I've had some clients retire, I've had some clients sell businesses, and it's fun to be alongside that journey with them. One thing that I noticed was people were still unhappy. Achieving a financial goal like amassing a certain number of of wealth or buying your first property, those things are temporary, and I was still noticing people are still getting divorced. People are still, lengthening their relationships to their kids. Um, it just seemed like something was off. And maybe because I'm a millennial, I don't know, but it's one of those things of I wanted to be able to help people and really make a big impact. Now, there's kind of this reality check moment where I know I'm not a family therapist. I'm not a life coach. I'm not all of those things. And so how could I, as a certified financial planner, senior wealth advisor, head of financial planning, founder of Life First Wealth Management, how do I help people bridge this gap between the the obvious things when it comes to financial planning, having a plan, you know, following a strategy, growing wealth, all those things, to having a meaningful life, truly having a meaningful life, knowing that I can't be that therapist and have these meetings where we're talking about, issues in life. And uh, I've had a lot of pivotal points that kind of led me on this path, right? One of those was about a year ago. I had a conversation with my wife. I was talking to her about this idea of what I wanted to this different segment of the business that I wanted to launch,
Okay.
and and without going into too much detail, it was simply about being able to provide a service that I know that I'm really good at. A lot of other larger firms, or actually even smaller firms, want to offer but don't know how and don't know how to monetize it. So my idea was I was going to come up with a business that was going to be contracted by all of these small financial firms that wanted to provide the service and for their clients, almost kind of like a third party contractor coming in and providing an outside counsel, if you will. And I was really excited about this. I was talking to my wife about it, about how much money we could make and all these different things. And I'm rambling on, as I'm probably doing now, and going off for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, telling her about all these ideas. And I turn over her and I'm like, what, excited to see what her response is going to be. And her response was, when is it ever going to be enough for you? Have you ever had that feeling of, or had anybody tell you something like that?
Yeah, totally.
Or
Totally.
you tell somebody else that, and it was funny. And that same week, I had a meeting with a client, a business owner, very successful, started and sold at least two other businesses. One of them I got to experience with him. And he's in the middle of this other project, and he's like, "Oh man, if I could just get to this next level, then..." And I heard it. I heard that pattern again. Like there it is again. And the more I started paying attention to that, more staying attuned to that, this actually connects to how I met Vince.
Mhm.
Funny enough, I didn't plan it this way, but around that same time, I met Vince and we connected on a whole nother level, on a whole different dimension. But I realized it wasn't just my story. It wasn't just that client story. It seemed that this was a common thing. And so, yes, I help people come up with, elaborate financial plans that can protect their assets and can help them grow assets. And we get a lot of access to investment vehicles that other advisors don't have access to. We play a lot in the alternative investment world where we're not just investing for returns, we're investing for tax strategy. We're investing for potentially higher returns than normal. We're investing for, it's just a different experience than that typical roller coaster of a market. So there's a lot of things that I do different technically. But really what I'm doing is I'm helping already purpose-driven business owners figure out what is enough. And it's not to say we should limit ourselves to not go start that second business, but it's more about answering that question, why? Why? What's the point of this? If is it just to grow wealth just because I know how to do that? Well, let's tie back to our core values. When people tell me what their core values, you want to know what the most top three most common core values I hear?
What are they? I would be very curious to know
Yeah.
what the top
The
three are.
top three is faith, spirituality, God, one way or the other, let's just call it faith, family,
Mhm.
and loved ones, friends, community. It comes in different forms, but those
Okay.
are the top three values that I hear from people. And so if we're thinking about growing and scaling and trying to get to this another level, that's great. But are we going to lose ourselves in the process? Are we going to lose our relationships in the process? Are we going to lose our connection to our spirituality and faith in the process? Or are we going to go after that and simply say, and then say, oh well, we did it because of God or for whatever reason. But along that journey, God or whatever we believe in wasn't anywhere to be found. Right. And so it's about alignment. That's a lot of what I do. And so, like I said, yes, we get into all the fancy technical stuff. I mean, we're able to help people on average. Well, technically I shouldn't give averages, especially on a recorded interview, but we can generally help people save in the hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in taxes with proper planning and strategy. But none of that matters if it's not connected to something greater, if it's not connected to
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
intentional or purposeful.
Yeah.
Does that resonate?
100%. 100. In fact, Miguel, with me, you're speaking to the choir
Yeah.
because I am 100% with you. When I started my first business, which was all the way back in 1995, I gave zero thought whatsoever to how did I want that business to fit in with my life and stuff. And I knew a guy in Seattle he was in that line. I got into the cleaning and restoration business. I knew a guy in Seattle who was in that business and he looked like he was doing pretty well for himself. And I thought, well, gosh, I should get into that business. That was my whole thought process.
Mhm.
And well, within 1 year, I blew through. I had worked prior to that. I worked for 7 years as a commercial fisherman in Alaska to save up money to start my own business. And in the first year of having the doors open on that business, I blew through $300,000, and I still just didn't know what I didn't know. And I was just going through money a lot faster than I was bringing it in, and I found somebody to help with that. And but then the next thing was we started growing that business, and now I am finding myself working 7 days a week. And after a certain, I don't know how long that had been. It had been a while. But I would remember sitting in the office on a Sunday again going, you know what? I do not want to be here. I should not be here right now. And this is not what I wanted for myself at all. And for the first time ever, I sat there with pen and paper and like, what the heck do you want from your business? And I actually started to write some things down. And that was a heck of a that it was a painful experience, but I can tell you now for 20 years for over 20 years I have been focused on how can I have my business fit in with the life that I want to live so that I'm a husband. We just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary last month. I'm a father to 7 kids right now. I am grandfather to 6, and we'll have another grandchild come join us in March. And I love being a husband and a father and a grandpa as much as I love being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I really I've come to realize that yes, I can have it all, and there has been times where I certainly turned down opportunities because it wasn't, as you said, in alignment. That it would require whatever. That it's like, no, I don't want to do that, and so
Mhm.
therefore, I'm not going to take advantage of this opportunity. And
Yeah.
I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah.
And but I know also there's a lot of entrepreneurs who have not got to that spot yet either.
Yeah.
And
And
so.
And we might call ourselves lucky, or maybe it was just, I feel like everybody is on a different path. Sometimes people's paths take longer than others did. Mine took, almost 13 years of having my own business to realize that. And for your audience who may be wondering, did I actually ever pursue that idea? I didn't. And it was because the same as you, I realized, well, gee, if I do that, I'm gonna have to really grind this out for the next, who knows, 3 to 5 years. Then I'm gonna have to staff up. And if I really want to be able to step away, I need to hire a management team. That could take another 2 years, and I just thought my kids are I have two kids, one's 6 and the other's 4. I'm like, I might miss out on some things, and I don't know that I want to do that, and I don't have to do that, right? But what I'm hearing from you is that there's almost kind of this marriage. So oftentimes, I think, and I've experienced this as a business owner too. We seem to always kind of carry two different identities or masks, right? We have our business identity, we have our business mask, and how we show up in the world, right? And we identify as a business owner or as a entrepreneur or whatever it is that we do in our profession. But we don't identify ourselves as all of it. And so there's this, what I'm hearing from you is you've kind of figured out a way to be, I call it radical wholeness, where you're the same person. I mean, I don't know you well, but I'm willing to bet that to a degree, if I were to see you in front of your family versus in front of your work colleagues or clients, you're the same exact person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's about, and radical wholeness means how can I fit work into my life? It's funny you say life first because that's the name of my LLC is Life First Wealth Management. And I actually just started an interview series where I'll be interviewing 50 people about this very topic. It's called the Life First Conversations. But yeah, it's that's a lot of what I do. What I find joy in it is somebody asked me that once before, and I heard somebody else say these words, and it resonated with me, so I'll steal them for myself. But it's to witness the human spirit triumph.
Mhm.
It is the greatest feeling in the world, right?
Absolutely.
To be able to and you can see it when there's this simple perspective shift. And that's my favorite part, where I'm working in front of a family, a man or woman, business owner, or the family, and they've been successful. They're not here to see me because something's broken. They're here to see me because they're expecting some sophisticated financial planning, design, and all that cool stuff. What they don't expect is this realignment process, right? And oftentimes they have these big goals and they're moving forward in the direction of them, but they're most often relying on this sheer willpower. And we hear nowadays we have a lot of motivational speakers out in the world talking about the rise and grind culture, right? Get up
Yeah.
at 5 a.m. and no BS and let's work out and do the yoga and do the grounding and have your checklist. And if you do all these things, you're going to be successful. No time for BS, no distractions. It's just like all this rigidity, and that's cool. All those things, there's value to that, right? It's discipline. There's order, and all of that. There's focus. But my thing is, what happens when forget my French, when shit hits the fan, right? What happens when life happens, when somebody so close to you that you consider, or it could even be family, just passes away that you weren't
Yeah.
expecting?
Yeah.
Are you gonna show up to work the next day and continue going, or is it gonna derail you? And so what I found is that what really helps people move in the direction of their dreams and their goals is not this sheer will. I mean, that's part of it. We got to have that willpower to wake ourselves up, every morning and do what we have to do. Life's hard that way, and we know that. But when life really gets hard, we need something that's pulling us in the direction of where we want to go.
Yeah.
And I think that's where these values and having this very clearly identified vision of what we want, even if it's just a visual of what it is that we're trying to build, but we have this why that is constantly pulling us in that direction. And that's how I feel now, and that's probably what you feel, and that's probably why it's so easy and natural for you to keep doing what you're doing because you don't have to necessarily push yourself. You're
Yeah,
enjoying it. You know
totally.
why you're doing this each
Yeah.
and every single day.
Yeah.
And when the times get hard, when I'm sure they do, and you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And you remember why.
Yeah.
And it pulls you,
Yeah.
right? And so that's the most gratifying thing that I get. It used to be the oh, client got a 15% rate of return and I think that's going to make their day, but it's temporary. People get happy about that. And then when the market was down 20%, they're pissed off, right? Or if they're not pissed off, they're not happy,
Yeah.
and so let's focus on those things that actually matter.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And you're so right. It's not the money that's going to bring us the happiness. For me personally, it's experiences. It's spending time with people that I enjoy spending time with, that I enjoy being in their company, whether that's with work and clients or whether that's away from work with family and friends, either way. And there is definitely overlap, in that too.
Yeah.
And sometimes I host events for entrepreneurs. I don't do big events, but I do small events. In fact, I think the most people that have ever been to one of my events is 18. So small group events. But I'll tell you, it's with the right kind of people. It's with entrepreneurs who are making a big impact. And when I host these events, I like to. I don't know. Well, I mean, the last one I did was last year. I rented a 20,000 square foot home here in my hometown, and we hosted it there. And
Yeah.
most of the attendees stayed on site and stuff. And then my goal is that once somebody gets there, they don't have to worry about a thing until they leave to go home and stuff.
Yeah.
That once they're there, we got everything taken care of. And so I cater the meals and we get all that done. And my older daughters, they'll help out. My wife might help out and stuff,
I love it. Yeah, getting
And
the whole family involved. Yeah.
yeah, and like when they do, then they're interacting with the folks that are coming there, and it's a cool experience because they get to meet my family, they get to meet my kids and stuff, and they're like, "Wow, Kev, you got amazing kids,"
But
and it's
also your family gets to meet them and they get to
yes,
see what you're
yes.
up to. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I was yes, and my family gets to meet my clients and people that I'm working with, and they're like, "Wow, Dad, you got some really cool business friends." And so, and it's just a real, I mean, and it all comes down to relationships. That's what, and my whole thing is like, man, I just get to do cool stuff with people that I consider my friends. And I couldn't imagine anything better than that. And I'll just keep doing that till I can't do it anymore, you know.
Right.
And so, well, this is awesome. This is awesome, Miguel. And so, okay, so now that we've got some really good context set here and people have a really good idea of what you're all about, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. And I'm going to reiterate the question that I want to ask you for the benefit of our listeners. So, Miguel, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. There's a lot of people that come to mind when I think of the intersection of my life and I mean the way I speak, my perspective of the world. A lot of that has been shaped by mentors and people that I look up to. But if I had to narrow it down to one, and it's not that he was the most influential overall, but the way you framed that question, if I hadn't met this person, I don't, I would not be standing where I'm standing now with the profession that I have.
Okay.
So his name is Rudy Rodriguez. This was back in high school. or right after high school. So in high school, I was an okay student. I think I was like a let's give myself a B minus student. I was okay. I wasn't a straight A's or anything like that. Uh, funny tangent story to that. I realized later, actually just earlier this year, I was diagnosed with ADHD, which completely explains my entire childhood, by the way. I always thought I was just the dumb kid in class that wasn't getting it, but it's just my brain was going on a million miles an hour. Anyways, after high school, I had no aspiration to go to college. I had my sister is 5 years older than me. She went to college. My parents basically said there was no other option other than to go to college. Um, and my high school counselor, who took a liking to me and was kind of like a second mother, said, there's a guy that I want you to meet, and he works with students to kind of. She didn't give me a lot of information, maybe, and it was probably a good idea because maybe if she said too much, I would have just not met with the guy. But she just said he helps people, and it'd be a good idea to meet him and see where it goes from there. Just kept it very casual. His name is Rudy Rodriguez, and mind you, I didn't drive back then, so we scheduled a time to meet. He wanted to meet with me in person.
Okay.
Now, for your listeners, I live in the Bay Area. So he lived in San Jose. I was living in northern Bay Area in a city called Hayward, which is about a 45-minute drive, right? So we were going to meet somewhere in the middle. My mother dropped me off to meet him, and we are going to meet at a coffee shop. So we got together, and he started asking me a bunch of questions. Just about my life. Questions that nobody's ever asked me before, like, or maybe they have, but not with that intensity,
Okay.
not with that I actually care what you have to say. Like I'm not just asking because it's something to ask. And there were questions, simple questions like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? And, what do you like about yourself? And what don't you like about yourself? And the more and more you kept probing, I was actually getting kind of annoyed. I was getting annoyed because I didn't really know the answers to these questions, and I didn't know what his angle was. I was like, "What are you asking me all this for?" And mind you, I was also a little confused. I didn't know what this was all about. I didn't know if I thought he was going to be interviewing me for a job. So I actually remember that's how it started. I told my counselor that I just wanted to start working. That's what it was. I didn't want to go to college. I thought I'm just gonna follow my dad's footsteps and go into construction. I'll start making probably about $20 an hour, which, back in '05, $20 an hour was a little more than what it is now. I guess not significantly more, but a little more. And so I was telling her I really just want to start working. I need to start making money. And so I thought I was here for a job interview. And he started asking me all these questions. And anyway, so he gave me some homework and he says, I want you to write down who you are. Well, what do you mean? He's like, just who are you? I want you to write that down. Okay, whatever. So we left. We met again. Maybe I think it was like a week later or so. And I wrote like this 3-page document. I was all ready for this. Again, I'm thinking like, okay, this is going to be for something.
Uh-huh.
And I handed it over to him, and he just sets it aside. I'm like, thank you. I'm glad you did that. And now I'm pretty upset. I spent a lot of time on that. You're not going to read
Uh-huh.
it?
Uh-huh.
And he's like, well, I just wanted you to know who you are. Do you know who you are? And I don't remember what my answer was at this point, but fast forward, he ended up being a mentor of mine and I learned a lot about him, and he mentors a lot of people till this day. He's in his mid 70s, still mentors a lot of young kids in high school and community college. Um, some of these kids, one of those kids, he actually ended up adopting as his own.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's made a big impact on many people's lives. But he helped me in a lot of different ways. One, he got me exposure. So, if there's anybody here listening and they're mentoring or they're being mentored, especially if you're thinking of going into mentorship and mentoring somebody else, one of the biggest things that I got from him was exposure.
Mhm.
He invited me to some like late night, or not late night, but like these like adult professional galas where perspective, I Mexican American immigrant family. I have nobody in my family that is wealthy. Well, maybe some distant cousins and uncles. But I didn't know wealth. I didn't own a suit. I didn't have nice dress shoes. But he invited me to this gala, the kind where you have two forks and two spoons and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it was a really awkward experience for me because I've never been in that kind of environment before. And I later found out that this was like a professional networking event. They were fundraising money for some big organization. Um, and I felt really out of place, but he made me feel so welcome. He would
Okay.
go around introducing me to people. That's one example. He asked me to apply for this position that I had no idea what it was for. And I became the youngest Citizens Advisory Commissioner for the city of Hayward, not knowing what I was getting myself into. I was 18 years old, sitting on a board with other people at the City Hall. Anyways, so he really shaped my career, the way that I think, and set me on a better path.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Wow. That's pretty awesome. You know, so I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this question. I want you to think about an experience where you personally, Miguel, uh, you got to make a really substantial impact. And maybe even in the moment, maybe it even surprised you a little bit. You were like, wow, look at what just happened right there. And you also know that that would have never been possible if not for your relationship that you had with him. What's an example of something like that, Miguel?
So, yeah, that's a good question. First thing that come, I mean, there's a few, but one thing that came to mind. So I worked full time when I was in college and went to school full time. It was the only way I could pay for college. And he had gotten me a job at a company called a small company, you might have heard of it, State Farm.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so I worked at State Farm and worked my way up. And I was working under this agent that he had recommended, and I was a shoo-in because of his relationship.
Okay.
That's not the story. The story is I got into a big disagreement with this employer. Um, the long and the short of it is he wanted, this was before Obamacare.
Okay.
So, think back to when you had to qualify for health insurance, which is crazy to me. Um, he wanted me to sell these insurance policies that health insurance policies that were complicated. You basically had to be cream of the crop healthy. Um, and they could actually offer coverage to people who weren't as healthy, but it was very expensive and covered very little, right? And he wanted me to sell more of that because the premiums were really high and we needed to get revenue up. And I said no. I didn't believe in it. I thought that there was better stuff out there, and I didn't want to do it because I felt like I'd be doing wrong for people. Um, and actually, that ties into my backstory that I didn't get into, but I ended up getting fired from that job for insubordination.
Okay.
It's the first time in my life that I've ever been fired, but I was really proud of that. But this was on a Friday, and I called Rudy and I said, "Hey, um, I don't know what to do. You know, I'm a college student. I need to make money, and I don't have time to go out and find another job because I'm working full time and I'm going to school full time, and I'm part of this organization, and I was stressing out." He said, "Well, Miguel, don't worry about it. Let me make some calls." He called another agent who was down in San Jose or some other place. I can't remember where it was. Basically called in not even a favor, but he just called. He asked, well, the favor was, can you interview him? And if it's a good fit, I'd like you to hire him. And I got on a call that evening with another employer and got the job over the weekend. Started Monday. So it's almost as if I never got fired. But what that did, the reason why that still shaped the course of my life is it kept me in an industry that I would have most likely ended up leaving the financial services industry because I had nothing. I didn't want to have anything to do with the financial services industry. In fact, I despised it. I never wanted to be a financial advisor, which is very ironic.
Wow. Wow. That's uh that's quite a story right there. That's quite an experience for sure. And so you ended up staying there. And so how did that lead you to the work that you do now, Miguel?
It's kind of a well, so to tell that story, I think people need to know that what happened and why I didn't want to be an advisor in the beginning. Because that not wanting to become an advisor is actually what made me an advisor, which is kind of
Okay.
weird. Um, 2008 recession, you remember that.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure you know a couple people that suffered through that, maybe lost a house, lost a job. My family lost everything during the recession, and I mean everything. They fell victims of predatory lending. The guy who sold my parents the mortgage that they had, uh, my my parents were his kids' godparents.
Okay.
There was a talk about relationships.
Yeah.
There was a big relationship,
Yeah.
friends from church, right? Sold him a loan that it was a 2 or 3 year arm, so it was going to go variable after those number of years. Anyways, my parents thought they had a 30-year mortgage because that's what they wanted. That's what
Didn't
they
even
asked for.
know that it was just a 2 or 3 year arm. Wow.
They asked for that. They got told that that's what they had, and they understand English. They can read a little bit, but not much. And a lot of this was based on trust.
Mhm.
um, which is a learning experience. But safe to say, when that happened, my parents were furious. They were confused.
Yeah.
They tried to refinance, but as you kind of know where the story goes, the house was now there wasn't enough equity in the house to refinance the property. So then they went to their CPA or their tax professional that ended up doing uh, some frivolous things, messed up their tax situation. That same tax person recommended an attorney that was supposed to help them save the property. That he was going to fight the bank and said, claimed he had dozens and dozens of cases where he's helped other people do the same thing. So my parents trusted again and worked with this attorney, spent their entire life savings, which, isn't much in the grand scheme of things, was about 50 grand that they paid this attorney over a long period of time, and that attorney never did anything. They lost the house. My dad lost the job. He worked in construction. I had to move back home, help out. I mean, it was a devastating experience. So when I say I had a distaste for the financial services industry, I just thought of people in finance as greedy. All they care about is money and material things. They don't really care about helping people. That's an afterthought. I was a little naive to think that everybody in the financial world thought this way. Um, and I was young. I was, in my early 20s. And so I did what any mature young 20-year-old does. And I posted my entire feelings on Facebook and said how I was leaving the financial services industry. I was going to pursue law school. I was a pre-law major in college, and I wanted to stand up for people. I feel like that's what I was always built for, is I want to, I've gotten beat up for it in school. I mean, standing up for people is something that is really important to me. So I wanted to go to law school and fight the big man, make sure that this never happens again. And if it did, I was going to be there to do something about it. And I was ready for that. And so a friend of mine from college read the post on Facebook and said, "Hey, you should come check out our firm. We're different, and I've heard that story before. But before I interviewed his company, I interviewed a couple of others. I won't mention their names, but some big wirehouses. And I went to the interviews, and it was like proving exactly what I believed. one interview was terrible. The guy's like, "Oh man, you see that car outside? That's $100,000 car. You can have that car if you bust your butt off and you do these things over the next 3 years. You could be driving that car, and you should see my house and all this stuff." I'm like, "You are talking to the wrong person." Uh, if he only knew. Uh,
Yeah.
but he was feeding that same narrative, right? Like you guys are just Jesus, like it was exactly what I had pictured. So then I go to this interview. I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but because I normally always want to present myself well. But again, I'm young. I was furious. I was on a mission and not as mature. I showed up to this interview wearing sandals, shorts, and a baseball cap. I wanted to go into that interview. I wanted them to look me up and down. I wanted them to say no so I could be on my way. And it ended up being a 2 hour long interview. And what they said that was different, and I ended up moving on from that firm after some years. But what was different was they weren't talking about money. They weren't talking about products. They were talking about genuinely what I wanted. They really cared about what I had to say. They cared about my mission. They cared about, the things that were important to me, and then determine, well, do those goals, do those dreams, does that fit with what we have to offer you in terms of a role in wealth management, financial planning? And so I heard a lot of good things, and I kind of started from there. But yeah, I hated math growing up. Everybody that I run into that's been in this career, they've either majored in finance or they, you know, were really successful in the stock market, and so now they want to teach other people. And here I am. I hated this industry, and now I'm in it. But you know what? I feel like the second part of this story is the first 10 years I felt like an outsider because I mean, let's be real here for a second. Miguel Delgado, CFP. You're not going to hear that very often. Every conference I went to, I was one of like maybe two or three people of color. And I don't say that to impress, I say to impress upon. It's a different industry, and it was a big culture clash for me. So I always had that imposter syndrome. Always felt like I needed to be the kind of advisor the industry expected me to be. And instead, now I'm building a different type of practice. I'm building a type of advisor that I think most people are craving for, but they don't know how to articulate it because they don't know it exists.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. And I can tell you from personal experience, I get to hang out with some pretty amazing entrepreneurs, and I can tell you what they're always looking for is, well, for one, they're looking for people that they can trust. That there's trust in both character and competence, and then there's also this alignment of both interests and values. And that's that sweet spot, that intersection where those four come together. Boy, that's a sweet spot right there. And that's where really cool stuff happens. And that's what I like to do, is bring people together at that spot where that just exists. If I just held a virtual roundtable last Friday, and I mean, I've done a lot of these virtual roundtables. I get small groups of entrepreneurs together on Zoom that they don't know each other at all. And yet by the time they're done with that roundtable, they're all exchanging contact information, making plans of fun. And these entrepreneurs are all like really well established entrepreneurs. And one guy on the roundtable just made the comment, yeah, I'm just here just because I didn't even know what to expect exactly. But I'm just here because Kevin told me that this would be a really great experience. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Month and a half ago when we talked and I told you what the roundtable was all about, I told you what to expect, but that was a month and a half ago, you
Yeah,
know. And so Friday, that conversation might as well have been years ago.
yeah.
But they showed up, and then as soon as that one guy said that, all the other three were like, "Yep, same deal." I didn't know exactly what this was going to be about and what to expect, but I just trusted Kevin and to show up. And they set aside 2.5 hours to be there too. You know,
Um, yeah.
and And 2.5 hours of time for a busy, successful entrepreneur is, that I mean that's usually that's one of their most valuable assets is their time for sure.
That's a
And
huge testament. Yeah.
but when that trust is there, and by the way, I'll just say, I mean, I'll give myself a pat on the back. They all had an amazing experience, you
Good.
know, and and but when that trust is there like that, I mean, that's what we all want is people in our lives that we can trust and that are in alignment with our values and our interests and stuff, regardless of what it is, whether it's, the the person we might hire to help us with a certain aspect of our business, with maybe with our marketing or whatever, or in your case, the person to help us, with our financial planning and stuff. We all want that same stuff. And that's the big thing right there. And what people don't realize is that it's not like you alluded to it earlier in this conversation about putting on our business mask or not having our business mask on. It's just showing up and being us, you
That's
know.
yeah.
And that's the way we create that trust with people is just simple stuff, doing what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. Saying please and thank you, showing appreciation. I mean, little stuff, but yet it makes all the difference in the world. And when we make a mistake and something falls through the cracks, because you know what, that happens every once in a while too. But you know what? When it happens, we just own it. We just own it. We don't try to push it off on somebody else. Oh, that was just own it. And it'll be okay.
The authenticity is what you're referring to, right? It's being authentic to yourself. It's respecting your own boundaries. That tends to attract others, right? Because there's this silent power in that when you don't have to say all these things, it just exudes out of you because they can feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation, Miguel, today. And for anybody who's listening to this going, man, Kev, I really like Miguel. I just love how he shows up. I love who he is. And maybe they're kind of now thinking like, man, maybe he can help us, or maybe I know somebody else that I want to connect him with, or what have. Any resources, any websites we can share with them?
Sure, yeah. So I have my personal website that just talks about a little bit about my origin and what I do. So there's all the different services that I offer.
Okay.
So it's very simple. It's just www.legacywealth hyphen my first name
Okay.
Miguel.com. That's one way. LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So
Okay.
if you want to check that out, send me a direct message there. My appointment scheduling link is also on LinkedIn.
Okay.
We can the people if the people somebody wants to schedule an introductory phone call, that's a good place to start.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Miguel, once again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I'm excited to get this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs. So thanks again.
No, well, you're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely.